Wow. Well, thank you for coming to the presentation this morning. And I'd like to thank the MRR organization group for the opportunity to speak here today. And I'd like to also congratulate them because for their ability to consistently put on such a fine product. This is the fourth time I've been presenting here. I've never seen a crowd like this yet at this session, so that's well done. It must be a record crowd here today. It's my fourth time presenting at this conference, and it's actually the fourth different company I'm representing presenting. And I like to think that's a function of my vast experience working in the Labrador Trough and iron ore. It has nothing to do with my inability to hold down a job. But Rudy, I still haven't worked for Tata yet, so just keep that in mind. We'll see next year how it works out. Let's start with a HSE share. In keeping with the theme of my presentation, I'm going to have an environmental share, an environmental challenge. And it's quite simple. If every Canadian could idle their car for just 3 minutes less per day, we would save 630 million liters of fuel and 1.4 million tons of CO2 emissions. That's significant. So just 10 minutes of idling of your car burns a quarter liter of fuel and 2.3 kilograms of CO2 emissions. Now, can everybody here think of an opportunity to decrease idling? Well, pretty simple one. You pull into Tim Hortons, if there's more than 3 cars in that lineup, you go in the parking lot, pull over, turn your car off, and walk in and get your coffee, and you're contributing to this 3 minutes. Now, before I get into the future, I'm going to talk a little bit about the past. It's been a hard year, the last year for Tacora and its employees, and for the community of Wabush and Labrador City, and all the suppliers. In October of last year, Tacora, unable to negotiate with existing owners to recapitalize the operation, filed for creditor protection under CCAA. And at that time, they started a solicitation process to find a new owner. Who wants to buy Tacora? Who wants to come in and recapitalize this to make it what could be one of the great operations in the Labrador Trough? And after the long process, in February 2nd, a successful bidder was recognized. And that good news was short-lived because in April, they announced that they were unable to meet the commitments of closing, and as such, that agreement was terminated. So, after some courts back and forth, on June 5th, the process started again. And on June 26th, 2 of the biggest existing debt holders for Tacora teamed up with the offtake partner for Tacora and current equity owner of Tacora, Cargill, to put together a much better package. And so we're on September, I think, 17th, we officially exited from CCAA, and we're much better as a result of this long process. We're better from the perspective we have an experienced and committed ownership group made up of Cargill, O'Brien Staley Partners, and Mill Street Capital Management. And with that, we have better liquidity. Tacora today is better situated than it ever has in its short 5-year history. With this agreement comes $250 million of equity into the business and additional commitments to fund debt. During that process, we've restructured some of our key deals, our railway deal, so our cost is lower now. Our offtake deal, so our revenue is higher now. So we're well positioned. And these 3 groups, they understand the iron ore industry, and they're committed. Why? Because they can see the future is bright. And why is the future bright? Well, because the world has a very important mission. By 2050, we want to be net zero. And that's a very, very important thing to do. Net zero doesn't mean you're not going to burn fossil fuels. It means if you are burning fossil fuels, you've got to capture carbon, you've got to have some offsets, but as well, we got to decrease our dependency on fossil fuels. This net zero mission is going to spark the biggest boom the mining industry has ever seen. Critical minerals, we talked about that earlier today. Here's a list of some of them. I highlighted two, specifically the steel, the iron ore, and manganese, which I'll talk about later. But as you can see, the steel is the only commodity that is consistent across every renewable technology. It's needed for every single one. And the size of the circles, you need large quantities. So steel production is going to go up. Well, here's the problem. Steel making accounts for 7 to 9% of the world's global carbon footprint. Oh, there it is. So it's 7 to 9% of the global carbon footprint. So you can't be the cause and the solution to the problem. Steel industry needs to change. I heard Michelle quickly mention green steel. I'm sure everybody in iron ore is talking about green steel. And if you look on the right, that's supposed to be green, that depiction, but it looks a little bluish. But here's the bottom line fact. On the left-hand side, steel making does not account for 7 to 9% of the carbon footprint. Iron making is the biggest part of that. Before you make steel, you have to make iron. All these iron ore mines, they don't ship iron, they ship iron ore. And then you need to make iron. So it's shipping at 65 plus out of the Labrador trough. And then it needs to be made into pig iron before it can be made into steel. So you bring it up to about 93 to 95% iron. And that's done in a blast furnace traditionally and still largely today. And the blast furnaces are not going away. Green steel transformation is happening, but the volumes that are required in the world, blast furnaces are not going away for a long time. But here's what happens in that blast furnace. Blast furnace is about removing oxygen, because that's what iron ore is. It's all oxygen. All the iron ores are about the same, a little bit depending on its magnetite and so on. But the real oxygen constituents are the gangue, the alumina, Al2O3, the silica, Si2O3. Those are the real sources. Now, how does this oxygen get removed? Well, it gets reduced, and it gets sent into the slag by using a reductant, coal, coke. That's your carbon source, and that's the source of the carbon footprint in steel making. But guess what? If you have less oxygen, you use less coke. You lose less coal. If it was Labrador or Canadian iron ore in that blast furnace, you'd use 25% less coke or coal than you do today, just by replacing it with our iron ore. So that's a big function. But we're moving to an operation which is, you heard of green steel. Green steel is about electric arc furnaces. And the biggest part of that is recycling the existing steel. You take the steel that's already steel, that's not being used, you melt it. You reuse it. Steel is the most recyclable commodity in the world today. But that's not enough. So you need some more iron ore. So you make that iron ore in what the most popular, DRI, direct reduction iron. But that's a much smaller process. It still uses carbon. Most use natural gas, which is still a carbon input. But their ability to take all these oxides are very, very low. So you'd have to have low silica. You have to have low alumina. And if you don't, it doesn't go into that market. Now, that natural gas is now being replaced by hydrogen. Then it's truly green steel. So you need low silica, low alumina. You need to be high, so that means your iron grade needs to be high. It needs to be over 65%, which Canada is. But on the seaborne market, not total mining, just on the seaborne market, there's almost 1.9 billion tons. 1.9 billion tons. And you add up all ArcelorMittal, Champion, IOC, Tacora, Tata, everybody together, what their capability is, not what they're doing, what their capability is, it would only add up to about 3%, a little over 3% of the total market. We're not a big player, But if you look at that market, you'll see that only 17% of it is above 65%. Only 17% of it can enter into this green steel world. Only 17% has the ability to lower your carbon consumption in your blast furnace. Well, we represent 22% of that market. Now we're a player. If you walk by Rio Tinto's booth out in the main hall, they have a statement right on top that says, the world needs Labrador iron to decarbonize. Absolutely correct. It's never been more true. How's Tacora fit? Well, if you look at other concentrates being produced in Canada and around the world, we have some of the lowest. Silica and alumina combined of only around 3.7. That's very, very good. In fact, we've been selling for the last 5 years into the DR world, and they love it. For years, we've always heard, Wabashore, that's no good. It got too high in manganese. And there is manganese is high, but that's not consuming carbon. And that's not scaring away these DR producers or others. What's really appetizing is our low oxides, our low gangue material. But the manganese also, in our process, we have to decrease it. And as a result, we now have two products. We have a high-grade iron ore, and we have a ferromanganese concentrate that is being sold into the battery world. It's used a lot in the construction of windmills. So we have two products going forward. So as we look to the future, we're well positioned on the iron ore side to capture what is going to be a bifurcated market. Not all iron ore is created equal. There's going to be a high grade and there's going to be a low grade. And the high grade is going to command the biggest price. And as we're making this high grade iron ore, hey, look, we got another product, ferromanganese. And we have lots of interest in that as battery plants around the world continue to increase. But you know, mining needs to change. It needs to change if we truly want to meet our 2050 targets, because the EV targets, 2035, I think it's now stretched out. 2035, 70 to 80% are going to be electric vehicles, all vehicles, and by 2050, all 100%. Well, let's look at an electric vehicle. Tesla battery weighs 771 kilograms. You need to mine almost 2,000 tons to make that one battery. So if the mining is not decreasing their carbon footprint, the benefits that we expect to get from this EV world are not going to happen. And if you look at not just iron ore and others, to meet that target in the next 25 years, we need to mine more copper, actually 115% more copper than we have in the history of mining, which has been around for hundreds of years. Like I said, the mining boom, we cannot decarbonize this world without mining. And if we want to do it fast, we need to mine faster. We need 55% more copper mines than is currently operating. So the mining needs to change. We need to decrease our carbon footprint to make this all worth it. Labrador is best situated to deliver this change. Mining is power intensive. Newfoundland and Labrador has infrastructure to supply low-cost green energy. Now, we need to take this low-cost green energy, and as Michelle talked about a little bit, we need to find ways, additional ways, to eliminate fuel consumption by using this green energy, by electrification of haul trucks, of shovels, of every piece of mining equipment that we can. Decrease our carbon footprint is key to the world demand. And there's very few mining jurisdictions in the world that have this level of access. Now, what's really interesting for iron ore, very soon, by the late 20s, you're going to have to pay carbon tax. Because our Scope 1 emissions become the Scope 2 delivery of our purchasers of iron ore. And if you have very, very low Scope 1 emissions, all of a sudden your product is more valuable because they're going to pay carbon tax on it. So we increased our margin even more. So now we have the highest grade material with the potential to be net zero by the end of this decade. We'll have the highest priced product on the market. So in summary, Tacora, we're in the best position of our short history. We have committed shareholders and we have liquidity. We have an opportunity to make an impact on our unit costs and our production through improvement plans and prudent capital spending. We have revenue improvement expected in high-grade iron ore market and on the ferromanganese sales. We have product quality in both areas that is well placed to capture this future market. We're in a jurisdiction with existing infrastructure and a competitive advantage from an energy perspective. The governments are aligned and motivated to support this growth, as you recently seen about the new transmission line announcement. At Tacora, we have a hard-working, dedicated workforce. We have seasoned local suppliers, and we have supportive communities. The future is bright. Thank you.